Veyikchu Terumah, and we will just go into the meat and potatoes of the Maamar. Then we will go into the actual Maamar by skipping down to Ois Beis on the bottom. So the Rebbe begins the Maamar with a few questions over here. If you noticed, Rashi also spoke about this, that really in the beginning of this week's parsha, when he talks about the Terumah for the Mishkan, the donations for the Mishkan, it's really very repetitive. It starts off immediately 3 times the word Terumah. Terumah means an offering, a donation, raising up to the Mishkan. It says, Daber al b'nei Yisrael v'yichuli Terumah, speak to the b'nei Yisrael, and they shall take for me or to me a Terumah. Me'eis kol ish asher yidvenu liboy tiklus terumasi, from every person that his heart will be generous, whoever feels generous, whoever is donating or benevolent, you will take my Terumah. And then in the third pasuk in the parasha, it says, "V'zoisa Terumah shetichu me'itav." This is the Terumah that you will take from them. So Mefarshim explain about why it says 3 times Terumah, but the Maamar is going to have his own approach about this, why it says 3 times the word Terumah. And this is going to be the focus of this Maamar, and going to explain also the differences in the way he talks about the Terumah. The first time he mentions Terumah, he says Veyikchu li Terumah, which the Rebbe is questioning. What's the li come to tell us? Why does it say Veyikchu, they shall take? It should say more appropriately, it should say the word V'yitnu li, they shall give to me. Then in the next time when it says about Terumasi, my Terumah, it says Me'eis kol ish asher yidvenu liboy, every person that his heart will be benevolent and giving. He doesn't say that the first time when he says Terumah. He adds that only the second time when he says Terumah. So therefore, these are a series of the questions that the Rebbe begins the Maamar with. Why these differences, not just why he says 3 times Terumah, which in itself is a question, but also why these differences of the way he speaks about the Terumah in all these different ways, the way he talks about it. So we see from this that it's not just 3 different mentions of the word Terumah, but each one has a specific concept that he's saying. So let's skip down to the bottom of the page, line 19, Ois Beis. Maybe at Tzemach Tzedek, Maamar Rebbe Seinu Zal, Barabbas Parshas Terumah, the Tzemach Tzedek, where the Rebbe brings this Maamar based on a Maamar at Tzemach Tzedek by the same title of Veyikchu Terumah, brings what it says in the Chazal in Medrash Rabbah on Parshas Terumah. Medrash Rabbah on Parshas Terumah, the Medrash connects this idea of the Veyikchu Terumah, al pasuk Veyikchu Terumah, it says, he connects it what it says in Shir HaShirim. In Shir HaShirim it says that my beloved, the sound of my beloved knocking on the door, open up for me, my sister, my beloved. That's what it says. Pischili achoisi rayosi. And the Medrash explains, what is it that Hashem is asking of us? We are Hashem's beloved. Hashem is talking to us. Hashem is knocking on our door, and He wants us to open up. What does He want us to open up? So He says, how long will I be going around without a home? Make for me a sanctuary, so I should not be outside. Meaning Hashem is asking, please don't leave me homeless. Don't leave me outside. So that's what the Medrash Rabbah compares and says, Pischili achoisi rayosi in Shir HaShirim is connected to what it says in our parsha, Veyikchu Terumah. I want to have a home. So the Rebbe with the Tzemach Tzedek explains about it. The idea behind this is, what's the intention? What's the purpose? Why are we being asked to give a donation? He b'shvil asiyas hamigdash is to make the Beis Hamikdash. Like it says further on in the psukim in our parsha, that you will bring all these things, and then what will you do with all these things that he enumerates, the silver, the gold, etc., etc. They shall make for me a sanctuary, and I shall dwell amongst them. This idea of making a mikdash, I should dwell amongst them, is not just a one-time event or just a one-place event, but it actually corresponds to the general service of what we are doing in this world. To serve it, to make the service, through this becomes fulfilled the purpose of creation, which the purpose of creation was that that Hashem desired to have a home down here below. B'medrash, like it's also brought down the medrash. V'asli migdash, amart lochem v'yichuli truma. I said to you, they shall take for me a truma b'shvil she'adar b'neicha, so I shall dwell amongst them. V'asli migdash, and they shall make for me a migdash. K'v'yachal amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter said, Chu oisi v'adar b'neichem. Take me and I will live amongst you. So we see that the medrash plays off of the word v'yichuli, means that Hashem is saying, take me in, v'yichuli truma, since the whole purpose is, why are they giving the donations? They're giving the donations to nations to make a mikdash. A mikdash is for Hashem to be able to live amongst us. So that's why it says v'yichuli, meaning you shall take me. That's why it says v'yikchu and li, like we said before. The word li is not that clear. What does it mean? And it's not that clear why it says v'yikchu, not v'yitnu, they shall give. But v'yikchu li truma is referring to Hashem. Take me in and give a truma, so I should have somewhere where to live and take me in. So now the Rebbe is going to explain that there the two psukim, that the two of the three times it says truma. There's the first time that it says truma v'yichuli truma. Then there's the second part in the very same pasuk. It says meish kolish yidvenu liboy tikchu as trumasi. So these two expressions that it says that you will take my truma from every person that's benevolent, and the beginning that says v'yichuli truma, are talking about two separate avodas. The Rebbe is going to explain. There is first, everything begins with Hashem awakening us and inspiring us from above, known in Chassidus and Kabbalah terminology as a serusa de la'ela, an inspiration and awakening from above. And that is, the Rebbe is going to explain, is the first time when it says truma in the pasuk, v'yichuli truma. And then in the second part of the pasuk, where it says, me'esa kolishi advenu liba tichwas trumasi, that's already what we are doing. The serusa de lasata, the inspiration down here below. So let's see how the Rebbe explains it here in the wording and why it says isha she'idvenu liba will now be understood and so on. Line 3. Say that the order the avodah is initially there has to be an awakening, an inspiration from above, to inspire and lead us to have our inspiration down here below. And this harkens back to the pasuk we brought before from Shir HaShirim. That's what it says in Shir HaShirim, the sound of my beloved knocking and saying, open up for me. That is talking about Hashem is our beloved. He's knocking on our door. He's asking to be open up the door and let him in. That is the inspiration that's coming from above. And the Rebbe connects it. This is also what it says, they shall take me, taking me and opening up for me is the same idea. What is Hashem exactly asking? Not just that Hashem awakens us, but we need to take and to receive that inspiration that comes from above. In other words, when Hashem knocks on our door, it's not just enough that he's knocking on our door. Just like anyone, when he's knocking on our door, he wants to be invited inside. So Hashem wants to be taken in when he's knocking on the door. And this is all part of the Surah Eila being brought in. And to explain that, he's going to bring something that the Baal Shem Tov says about baskoils, about the voices that come down min hashamayim. Yes, Levi's Alpia, you do a Maamar, Baal Shem Tov. We can explain this according to the well-known teaching and statement of the Baal Shem Tov. The Inyan Habaskol Shemachrezes Shuvu Banim. The Gemara brings down that daily there is a voice that comes from heaven that announces and proclaims, return children. In other words, the Eibishter is calling out to us and asking us to return. So the Baal Shem Tov asks on this Maamar Chazal, the L'chura Kasha, seemingly this is difficult. The sound of these proclamations, these announcements, are not heard by anyone. So if so, what is the effect of these announcements from above if no one hears them? The idea behind this is sometimes it falls into a person sudden thoughts of tshuva without preparing himself for it whatsoever. Normally, avoida means a person takes a moment and he reflects on his life, and that leads him to inspiration, that leads him to want to do tshuva, that leads him to want to become close to Hashem. But we find that sometimes a person could be walking the street, could be involved in their own business, could be working, sleeping, eating, whatever, and all of a sudden the Chapzik says, "Oi, you got to do tshuva." Where does that come from? Tshuva is not just something that falls into a person's mind on its own. If the person didn't work on it, where did it come from? The reason why it fell into his mind, because of this baskoil that comes out and says Shuvu Banim. So it reverberated and it echoed into his neshama. And even though the person was involved in mundane matters, still in all, he has this hirur tshuva. It's because of these supernal, these heavenly announcements. So the Rebbe asks on this. Yes.
When you hear a story that is very moving or inspiring, or you see a video that moves you to tears or to tshuva, is that from contemplating, or is that from Hashem? Is that something that Hashem sent your way? How would you describe that?
We could say that that's like the inspiration from above, similar to what we had in other Maamarim that says there will be a shofar gadol that will cause many Yidden to do tshuva, and the Rebbe says that shofar gadol that comes before Moshiach doesn't mean necessarily, or is not limited just to the sound of a shofar, but the inspiration of a whole generation of Yidden, or a few generations of Yidden to become closer to the Eibishter. That's the shofar gadol. So regardless of what form the baskol takes, or regardless what form the tshuva takes, if it's not something that I'm working on myself, so then you could attribute it all to a Sudusa Delayla. So he goes on, the Rebbe asks, line 17, a question. He asks on what the Baal Shem Tov explained. Yet we still need to understand this Inyan the Baskol Shemachrezes B'chol Yom. The Gemara says that's not just from time to time that there is this voice from Shemayim that calls out and announces to do tshuva, but it's daily. Af became yada inish benafshi. Still, all a person knows about himself. That many days can pass by without any thoughts of tshuva falling into him. Heaven forbid. So therefore, how are we going to explain that discrepancy? So the Rebbe explains, the idea behind this is, like the Chazal say, that the Gemara relates a story from Daniel that says in Sefer Daniel that Daniel received a vision, and the people around him at the time that he received the vision, they started trembling. So the Gemara said, why did they tremble if they didn't see the vision? Only Daniel saw the vision. So they explained that even though they did not see, but their mazel, meaning Hainusha mazel the mazel and the essence of the soul of above saw by them, and the same thing by us. Every single day, there is this baskol that says Shuvu Banim, and we hear it. Our mazel and the essence of an neshama above hears it. Hears daily these supernal proclamations. That's the awakening that comes from above. For this sake, there has to be that, like we said before, the Eibishter is knocking on the door. If he knocks on the door and you don't open up the door, that's not called Yisrus Eila. That's like not doing anything. Once the Eibishter knocks on the door, part of the Yisrus Eila, part of the awakening from above has to be Pischili, open up for me, Veyikchu, they shall take me in. We should bring the Eibishter in. To take and receive the awakening and inspiration that comes from above. And now the Rebbe concludes to answer the question that one of the questions was about why it says Veyikchu and not Veyitnuli. Line 26, according to this understood why it says, they shall take me, and it doesn't say they shall give to me. Since this idea that it's not the service of the person, it's not the person's own work. They're taking the inspiration that comes from above. So therefore, it's not about Veyitnu. Veyitnu would indicate that I am the one that's giving. I am the one that's doing the avodah. But since they're only welcoming in the Eibishter, so really we're not doing anything in that first stage. So therefore, it says Veyikchu, not Veyitnu. And then the Rebbe adds, line 2, in the first time when it talks about the Terumah, it doesn't say that his heart will be benevolent and give. Because that inspiration that comes from above is not dependent upon the manner of the person's service to be able to speak about how generous he is, how benevolent he is, how giving he is. It's not about him. He's just opening the door for the Yisraelis to come in. He's not doing anything yet. Because the whole idea of the first time it says Terumah is only the inspiration from above. That's why it says specifically, they shall take for me. So like the Maamar Rabbi saying was out Chazal say, Veyikchu Terumah ein ksiv kam. It doesn't say over here, they shall take a Terumah. Ela v'yikchu li, rather it says they shall take for me or to me. Why does it add the word li? So the Chazal say, Kol makom shenemar li harizakayim la'olam la'olam me'elamim. Wherever it uses the word li, this means it exists forever and ever and ever. When makom macher, in a different Maamar Chazal, it says, in a similar vein, Isa, it's brought down, Kol makom shenemar li ein azaz la'olam. Wherever it says li, it never moves. It will always remain. Not now and not in the future when Moshiach comes. Why is that unmoving? Why is that unchanging? Why does it stay forever? Because it's coming from above. Something that comes from within me. Since I'm a human being, since I'm created, I'm fickle. Today I'm like this, tomorrow I'm the other way. So if it's a srustal asata, inspiration down here below, it's possible to be on, to be off. But on the other hand, the first time it says Terumah, it says li, meaning everlasting. The kivash is inyan she'ein told about avodas adam, since it's a matter that's not dependent on the service of a person, which the service of a person can change, but rather it comes out of an inspiration from above. Therefore, it's not applicable in it any types of changes. It exists and it doesn't move forever and forever and ever. Now the Rebbe goes on to the second part of the pasuk, that the second time it says Terumah. Line 16. After there's the inspiration from above, skip the parentheses. There needs to be also the service of a person in a way of an inspiration down here below. That's why in this pasuk it says, where it talks about the second Terumah, where it's talking about the inspiration down here below, it refers back to the person's own generosity. The idea behind this is everything that comes from above, including this inspiration that comes from above, which is the first time that says Terumah, is much, much higher and incomparably so than the inspiration that comes from below that we do, because Hashem's power is infinite and unlimited, and it's the most highest level, whereas what we're doing, it's limited and so on. Despite that, so we would think, let's just have the one from above. Let's not deal and let's not care about my own inspiration. So he says, it's insufficient just to have the inspiration from above alone. There has to be also the inspiration down here below. Like it's explained, look at the Torah. When the service is only because of inspiration from alone from above, since this inspiration from above, without him preparing, like we said, it's like the baskel that a person is nisoider all of a sudden while walking in the street. Afterwards, it passes and it's over with, and it has no ongoing existence. Therefore, there has to be also the avoid in a way of inspiration down here below. That's what it says. Every person that his heart will donate and give and be benevolent and be generous. So in a similar vein, it's not exactly the same thing. In a similar vein, the Rebbe says that we need to have, when we have a fabrengen, we need to bring it down to achlotas toivus, because a person can be very inspired, but that inspiration is like coming from outside of the person. It's coming from above to a certain degree. And for it to be able to remain with the person needs to make good resolutions that anchors it, that even after the feeling and the excitement of the fabrengen and the emotional part of the fabrengen has gone, so then they remain with it as well. The Alter Rebbe, even in that Maamar to the Torah that he's referring to over here, speaks actually that there are people that come into Yechidus and tell the Alter Rebbe that they are, a few weeks they could be inspired and then they cease being inspired. So the Alter Rebbe explained, because the inspiration came from above without the person himself doing it. And to explain this matter more specifically in the service of a person himself, so the Rebbe is going to explain over here now that these two levels of Terumah, the first Terumah, which is about inspiration from above, and the second Terumah, which is about the elevation from below, the inspiration from below, is, and like one of our attendees loves to hear this expression, Momaila Lamata versus Momata Lamaila, really reflects that Rebbe is going to say in the two avodas of Torah and Tefillah. Torah is the idea of Hashem's gift from above. Hashem spoke from the heavens, he gave us the Torah. It's not our doing, it's Hashem giving it to us. Tefillah is about us approaching Hashem. It's the idea of giving ourselves up to Hashem and davening and so on. So the Rebbe is actually going to show how in the word Terumah, in the explanations of the Maamar Chazal and the word Terumah, we have a hint both for Torah, which is the first Terumah of Yisrus L'Eila, and davening, which is the second idea of Terumah, the Yisrus L'Sat. Let's see how the Rebbe explains it in Gimel. The explanation of this matter more in detail, specifically in the service of a person himself, concerning the idea of Terumah. There's two explanations in the word Terumah. Pirush Echad, one explanation, and we also have this brought down in Tanya, that Shetrumah hu oisius Torah mem. The word Terumah can be divided into two words, Torah mem. It's referring to the Torah that was given after 40 days of Moshe Rabbeinu being on Har Sinai. That is the first Terumah of the two Terumahs in the pasuk over here. It's the Yisrus L'Eila, the inspiration from above. In the second explanation, Shetrumah hu trei mimeya. the Chazal actually apply this in a different idea, but we're pulling this into this idea in a completely different concept. It's brought down that in Chumash, it doesn't give a shear for how much a person needs to give Terumah to the Kohen. Different Terumah. It's not the Terumah that we're talking about here in our Parsha. But we know there's Meiser, and there's Terumah, and there's Leket, Shikha, Peah, all the different gifts that we're supposed to give to the Kohen. So the Terumah, we're supposed to give some of our crop, some of our wheat, some of our other crop, we have to give it to the Kohen. How much? It doesn't say. When it comes to Meiser, it says a tenth of every sheep have to give to you have to give, and a tenth of the crops you have to give to the Levi, et cetera, or to the poor person. But Terumah doesn't say a shear. So the Chazal say that really for Terumah there are 3 shiurim. The Chazal were masaken for Terumah 3 shiurim, and they said that if a person wants to be really giving, he's going to give 1 of 40 to the Kohen. Let's say 1 out of every 40 stalks, 1 out of every 40 bushels, whatever, he'll give to the Kohen. If a person is the other side of giving, the other extreme, he'll just give 1 out of every 60. But the average person gives 1 out of 50. And the Chazal connected with the word Terumah. They say Terumah hu trei mimeya is 2 out of 100. In other words, 1 out of 50 is 2%. So they connect it like the Chazal always like to do, even when they are masakin their own takana, they connect it with a word and a hint in the Torah. So Terumah is 2%. That's 1 out of 50. The Zohar is explaining Terei Memeya, this expression 2 out of 100 is actually hinting at davening. Why is 2 out of 100 hinting at davening? So he says as follows. Listen, for those that like numbers especially, twice a day that we read Kriya Shema, we are obligated to read it once in the morning, once in the evening. Like we say in davening, evening and morning, daily, twice. With love, we say Shema. It's Aramaic for letters. Every time you recite Kriya Shema, in other words, in the morning Kriya Shema and the evening Kriya Shema, there's 49 letters. What are the 49 letters? Between Shema and Baruch Shem. There is 25 letters making up the first pasuk Shema Yisrael. The Chav Dal Doisis the Baruch Shem and 24 letters of Baruch Shem. So that's 49 in the morning and 49 in the evening. So therefore, if you have twice 49, the total is 98. So you're left over Vadayin Chaser Terei Memeir. You're still missing 2 out of 100. You're missing 2 to bring it up to the number 100. What is the 2 that brings it up to the number 100? Shu inyan mesiras nefesh be'echad shachris va'arvis. It's the idea that it says that in the word echad, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem echad, in the word echad, we're supposed to think about our unity with Hashem and total devotion and giving ourselves up for Hashem. And that's the echad. There's the 1 in the morning and the 1 in the evening. So the Terei Memeya is talking about the ultimate level, the ultimate idea. Terumah, Terei Memeya, 2 out of 100 is talking about the ultimate idea of davening, where the person gives of themselves. In other words, this is Rusa del Sata, this awakening from below to give themselves over to Hashem. So now the Rebbe is going to connect this all and contrast the Torah versus the davening. The idea behind this is the idea of Torah is in the way of drawing down from above to below, like it says, from the heavens I spoke with you. The Torah is also called bread from heaven, just like the man is called bread from heaven. Torah is called also bread, or it's heavenly bread. And it also says about Torah, behold, my words are like fire. Just like fire is not susceptible to becoming impure. So to the words of Torah are not susceptible to becoming impure. And even someone that Tameh, whatever level of Tumah, he may sit and learn Torah. He doesn't have to like go to the mikveh or whatever before he learns Torah. As opposed to Kriya Shema, which the point of Kriya Shema, the apex and the whole idea of Kriya Shema is to reach a level where the person gives his soul up in Echad, in a way of an ascent from below to above. So these are the two trumas, the beginning and the second truma of our parsha. Veyikchu truma. Meis kol ishid venu liboy tichos trumasi. The masha cause of Veyikchu truma by from shirus the leila kanalsiv base. What it says at the beginning, they shall take from your terumah, even a way of inspiration from above, like we said in the second chapter. That's the first explanation of Terumah that the Zohar explains. It's referring to Torah. Why? Because it has that thing. It's being drawn down from above to below. What it says from every man that will donate and be benevolent and generous. You shall take my Terumah. That's already. The person is donating. The person is being benevolent. That's already we said, in the previous paragraph. That's the inspiration down here below. So that's the second explanation. The word Terumah. It's going on the self-sacrifice that a person is supposed to have during davening. When he says Echad by Shema Yisrael, it's in a way of an elevation from below to above. Let us skip over to Ois Daled on page Tes. Actually, I think we have enough time. Let's not skip over. Let's go back. Then the Rebbe says, so it says like this. Up till now, we made this distinction. We said Torah is Mamayla Lamata, and Tefillah is Mamata Lamayla. Torah is Shrustala, the first Terumah. Tefillah is the second time where it says Terumah. Now the Rebbe is going to explain that in Torah we have both. Additional to this, we could say the Mashakos of Tichus Terumasi, where it says you will take my Terumah, Koi Gamal Inyan Torah, is also referring to the idea of Torah. Though the idea of Torah is hinted in the first time it says Terumah, like we said before, and which is going from above, yet there is something else. There is the Torah that follows davening. Davening is from below to above. So the Torah that follows davening has also the advantage of being an inspiration down here below. How do you do it? It's now on top of the next page. There's an advantage in the Torah study that follows davening over the Torah study that's prior to davening. Abba bin Yamin, who was an Amoira daven, and he requested, he wanted that his davening should be close to his bed, meaning as soon as he gets up, he should daven. And so when does he learn? He learns Torah only after davening, meaning that his Torah learning becomes infused with that davening perspective. That instead of Torah just being something that he receives from above, the Torah that follows davening incorporates also the aspect that davening is about, the Serusa do Lasata, and that informs and creates that the Torah is also in a way of an inspiration from below, Line 4, according to this, we can explain in the meaning of the second part of the pasuk, where it says, "From every person that his heart is generous, you will take my terumah." Through the avodah of Kriya Shema and davening in a way that his heart is generous, becomes the Torah study in a higher manner. In other words, his Torah reaches a much greater level than just when it's a gift from above. Trumasi mamish. It's in the first time it says Veyikchu truma. In the second time it says What is it indicating over here by saying my truma? Meaning you're connecting when you have the Torah in a higher way, because the Torah followed davening, that it becomes mamish mine, mamish Hashem's. We are mamish totally connecting with Hashem in a way that we don't connect even with the Torah prior to davening, because we have the advantage of davening. That we're actually experiencing, that's the words of Hashem that I placed in your mouth. That my tongue will respond your sayings, meaning that the way we learn Torah is in such a way that we do not feel that it's something that I am saying, but I feel like I'm just responding and repeating after the chazan, that I'm only repeating the words of Hashem. That feeling of complete bittul to Hashem when I'm learning Torah, that I'm just repeating Hashem's words, only comes following the previous type of approach, only following the fact that prior to this, we had the davening, we had the sustul asata. Okay. Up till now, he explained the first time it says Terumah and the second time it says Terumah. We didn't yet explain what it says in Pasuk Gimel in our parsha about the third time it says Terumah. So he's going to explain it, but he's going to explain it actually very short. So he says, line 11, Lachri calls in, after all of this, have a close avoided the kiyam mitzvahs. It comes about the general of service of fulfilling mitzvahs. Koilol gama avoida binyan arishus ba'ifin shekol masach yilshem shemayim b'chol rechecha de'ev. After you have davening, after you have Torah learning, then we have mitzvahs. Then we have not just mitzvahs, but involvement in all mundane matters to infuse and make sure that all of our actions are for the sake of heaven, and in all your ways you shall know him. Shall zen them are concerning this. It says, this is the truma that you will take from them, meaning from them is the emphasis that it's coming out of their lives, meaning out of what we are doing, and we are bringing that to Hashem as a mitzvah and so on. Okay. The Rebbe is going to go back to the idea of Veyikchu Terumah is to build a Beis HaMikdash. So essentially, he finished speaking about really the three ideas, but now he's going to go back to the concept of taking a Terumah to be able to build a Beis HaMikdash. This is really, in a way, a new point that he's elaborating on. Line 16. In addition to the general idea of taking from your Terumah the way it's in the service of a person, like we spoke about before at length, then there is the simple, literal meaning. There's the literal idea that taking from your Terumah, its goal is to make from me a sanctuary, literally a physical building. So, in addition to everything we spoke about in the soul of the person, the Torah, the Tefillah, the mitzvahs, the L'Shem Shemayim, there's literally the Ein Mikra Yotzin de Pshutai. It's about building a Beis HaMikdash. The Rebbe asked, like, we still need to understand it says they shall take from me a Terumah, they shall make from me a Mikdash. So we said Li Daika. You remember we brought before the Maamar Chazal, it says Li. And when it says Li, the Chalmakim Shenamar Li, Ein Zaz Lo'ilam, Lo'boil Mazev, Lo'ilam Mabba, wherever it says the word Li, it doesn't move forever. Not in this world, not in the world to come when Moshiach comes. Bari Achav like a Beis HaMikdash. Now there is no Beis HaMikdash. So how do we say Veyikchu Li Terumah v'asu Li Mikdash if the Beis HaMikdash doesn't exist? When it says in the Al Shech HaKadosh, a very famous commentary on Chumash, it says Shemigdash ha'elyon hanikra Migdash Adnai. There's the Migdash of above, the Migdash in Shamayim, that's called the Migdash of Hashem. It says Migdash Adnai koinu yadecha, your hands made ready and set up. The Migdash of Hashem. It's talking about the heavenly Beis HaMikdash. Mechuber mamish leMigdash atach is mamish joined to the Beis HaMikdash down here below. Similar to what it says in Tehillim, it says the city that it's joined to it together. So the Chazal say, what's joined? So he says, the The heavenly Yerushalayim, the Yerushalayim in the heavenly spheres, is joined with Yerushalayim down here below to such a degree, like we had not too long ago, that the Eibishter said, I will not enter Yerushalayim Shalmaila until we enter Yerushalayim Shalmata. So there's the union between Yerushalayim up above and Yerushalayim down here below, and so too there's a union of the spiritual Beis HaMikdash with the Beis HaMikdash down here. So now it's understood why we use the word li, even though seemingly the Beis HaMikdash doesn't exist. That's what it means, that even in this world it doesn't move. Not just that there will be a Beis HaMikdash when Moshiach comes, but even now, in this time, that's what it means, Ba'olam Haza, in this time, before Moshiach's times. Shemigdash El Yemeir Gam Achshav Beruchni is that the Migdash of above, the Beis HaMikdash, the supernal Beis HaMikdash, shines also now in the spiritual. We can add concerning this, also concerning the physical Beis HaMikdash, not just spiritually the Beis HaMikdash exists, but also the physical Beis HaMikdash exists. The Avshe Beis HaMikdash Hagashmi Charev, though the physical Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. So let's skip over to line 6, the middle of the line. Mikol Makim B'Negel Mishkan Dikram Mikdash, still and all concerning the Mishkan, which we've mentioned on previous occasions, that the Mishkan is also called the Mikdash, just like we see in our parsha. He says V'asuli Mikdash, and what's it referring to? It's talking to the Mishkan. So whatever happened with the Mishkan? So the Chazal said, Amr Chachamenu Zal, after they built the Beis HaMikdash, Shenignas Tachas Mechil Shel Heichal, that Moshe Rabbeinu's Mishkan was hidden away in the tunnels under the Heichal of the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, since the Mishkan, which is the Mikdash, is buried underground, therefore it comes out that the Mishkan is not just that the Beis HaMikdash is a spiritual thing that still exists, but the actual physical Mishkan exists. But it's only concealed, and you have to search it out. And not only that, the oidza is additional to this. Someone that's on such a state and level of an neshama of the world of Atzilus, could see it even when it is concealed. So therefore, this means that that is everlasting. It's all here. The proof is that neshama Atzilus could see it. Let's skip over a little bit further. And then he says in line 20, that he says, but those that don't see it, so he says in line 20, that a person needs to request from Hashem that Hashem should open up his eyes and shall see it. Since the existence of the Beis HaMikdash exists now as well, but it's concealed, therefore it's nokel yoser. It's much easier to draw down the physical Beis HaMikdash in actuality and revealed than if the existence of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Mishkan, would not be existing in the physical. So it's much easier now to reveal it because it's there. If the Mishkan would not exist physically, we need an avoid and a great effort and a great toil to be able to draw down the physicality. That's where it says that they shall take from me a truma and they shall make from me a migdash, li daika, specifically li, meaning she'enazaz la'olam. It's something that never moves, it never leaves us. Kivin shagam akshav kayemes mitziyusei shal mishkan begashmias davke, since it exists also down here in the physical, elishu behelam, but rather it is concealed. Then the Rebbe says, Marshall, an example for this, that when we daven and when we ask for certain things, so the davening cannot chashom be a bracha levatollah. If we're saying that the Eibishter heals the sick, we say the Eibishter blesses the crops and so on, and we don't see it in the physical, it must be that it comes down but it's something that is concealed. And since it's concealed, all we need to do is a very small amount to be able to bring it from the state of concealment to a revealed state. So then the Rebbe concludes the end of the Maamar. Let's go to line 10. I skipped a little bit around. Similar to this understood, also concerning the Mishkan that's found in a concealed state. This is what it also says in a Maamar Chassidus of the famous Chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek, known as Rav Hillel Paritcher. He said it in the name of the Alter Rebbe. Before very high neshamas like the Rashbi, the Beis Hamikdash was totally not destroyed. So therefore, it's always present, and therefore we could say Veyikchu li Terumah v'asu li Migdash, that the Migdash is always in existence. It never is completely gone, and therefore it's much easier for us to bring it out, to bring it down, to manifest it in the world, because it's all physically here, and they are able to see it. And all we have to do is follow the guidelines of the Rashbi of our generation, of the Rebbe, to actually bring it down to fruition. We should see the Beis Hamikdash built and open before our eyes with the coming of Moshiach immediately.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Beautiful. Very
Amen.
special. Thank you.
Wow, wow. See it now. Mr. Tavis Moshiach now. Take care.
Amen. Thank you. So special. Beautiful.
Thank you.
See everybody. Have a great week.
Be well. Take care.
Yes, Emma.
Good to see you. Mr. Tavis, we should have Moshiach now.
Amen.
Take care. For Shlema for Chayesar Malka, but Rachalei Chava. Shuas and Fuas.